What I try to do is change the way the agenda works and turn this into actions for you. I would really love that after this session you take something back home and start working with your clients, with your agencies on implementing some of the learnings. I just came back from the Global Media Festival in Montreux, which was yesterday, in fact. I was down there. And I was the chairman of the jury that awarded, well, there were about 1,000 submissions, and I have one Polish case. And we sat in a bunker over the weekend, really 2 days, just evaluated 154 cases. So I brought some of the winners with me, and I asked again, what made these cases win? And what could I tell you how to write such cases for you to win with your clients? And these are the ingredients of winning. 5 points, which I go through step by step. And at the end, I will show you some of the winning work. And I hope you will see why this is so important. And you would be amazed of the 154 cases. And these were the shortlisted companies, so there were more than 1,000. So when I evaluated the category, there were 80 submissions maybe. I mean, I must say 50 of them you really glance through in 2 minutes and you scrap it, because some of the key ingredients, what you see here, either consumer insight or an idea or the right strategy, was simply non-existent. Okay? That's what happens. Okay, let's go into number one. Yes, I show examples, as I said. Number one, know your space. Again, I changed this title because I'm a kind of born media manager for 20 years. Most of you, I guess, and I talked a bit before with your general director, most of you come from the classical media world. We know that space. My kids grew up in that world. I had to learn that world. So this is one of my key points, that we get to know, definitely the more senior ones are the ones who come from other aspects of the business, what is going on there. We talked already a lot that also the web, which is overall new, has moved from being information net to much more a social network. The likes, and I see, in fact, Carol and Effort from Facebook at almost every conference. There were 2 million, I think, 2 months ago. I would easily guess many more millions right now. Again, a touch to Facebook, which leads much more into, even beyond into the social space than they are already. There are now many social players. The world becomes as complex, even more complex, as the digital world when it started overall. And this gives you some hints about what we need to understand and who to work with to understand the space to then come to create campaigns. Social familiarity and literacy. Interestingly, there was a little survey done by Forrester looking into the year 2016. The question was, for the next 3 years, marketing's effectiveness will increase, stay the same, or decrease for each of the following channels. And you look through, it started, no surprise, with social media. I stopped when I saw the first classical media with TV at 21%, and further down there is then out on all the others. So we are definitely on the right track, and the theme of the conference is absolutely spot on. Okay, number 2, understand your consumers. When I say this, I'm still very, very surprised how many cases I see and how many discussions I have with no consumer insight. While I'm here, I have to work a little bit in between. I need to deliver feedback on a brief, an agency brief. This, and it was a 5-page brief, I just started glancing through on the plane, starts with, we want 70% TV and 30% radio. No objective, no insight, nothing. That's the basically first line as a briefing to the agency. And it was further, not just audiences, but communities, and that has a completely different aspect than just talking to audiences. Esther Lee from AT&T made a very nice point at one of the last conferences about our life is in my hands. I was driving once with my daughter to somewhere in the city. She was 16 at the time. And as a dad, you ask her, you have everything? I mean, I think in terms of your handbag and money and da-da-da. Yes, I have my mobile phone. Nothing else, no money, no key, just her mobile phone. And she was good and happy, I have everything I need. Okay? That's what happens, and if you see technology coming up, you will see that it will converge to whatever you have in your hand. It's like a party. You interact, you become social, you talk, you listen, but you turn around immediately if something is not of interest for you. the times where we talk to people, like I feel like talking to this wall of people, right? This is basically over. It's much more getting into face-to-face discussions, group discussions, communities, one-to-ones, as you heard Mark Pritchett from Procter & Gamble said, it's one-to-one relationships they want across the world. Some of the data which I ran into, which shows you that the social activity does lead to business results. 51% who like a brand are more likely to buy from it. 68% more likely to remember an ad with social context, twice more likely to remember the ad, 4 times more likely to purchase. These are compelling data. Southwest Airlines fans 362% more likely to visit the site, and now comes the social aspect, 161% their friends. Number 3, come up with great ideas, and I added that travel. Again, I'm very surprised sometimes about the lack of ideas, and I'll tell you a little story in a minute. What I added is the travel. What I see more and more, and I understand, a lot of the advertising spending in Poland comes also from international companies. Usually ideas are not necessarily born in the local countries, they are born in the headquarters of the agencies in New York, in London, in Chicago, elsewhere. Okay? So one of the things we work heavily on is on ideas that have so much potential they can travel and be compelling still here in Poland. There are 2 aspects. First, it's a platform for me for connections. Once we had the insights, we knew it, and once we had the idea, which was great, it was like a platform, a robust rock bottom thing from which we could spur all the ideas from. And the second point, the line is blurring. If you think about the Old Spice campaign, very famous, ran worldwide, you cannot even distinguish anymore. Is this media, is this digital, is this social? What is the idea, what is execution? It is blurring. So more and more this has major implications that we as experts work in teams to come to great campaigns, and we need to know the various aspects of it to build on each other. Number 4, create intentional communication. I added the word intentional here, as more and more you don't control anymore what is being communicated. You can air an ad, you can do something on the internet, you start a social conversation, but then it goes on and you can only observe it. You may be able to intervene, which again, if you think in terms of organizing your company or your agency, when you say you intervene, you have a bunch of people reading, assessing, and doing something, right? So it has major implications about what you do, but you cannot control it anymore. And that little word, which I know the Unilever CEO talked it once in a presentation, and the Procter & Gamble CEO talked it, let go your brand, is something very, very scary for many advertisers. What helped me very much is something which has been coming almost standard in the industry over the last years, is to classify the media activities into paid, owned, and earned media. Your paid media is obvious, you pay for what you get. Owned media you own as an advertiser or an agency, you own an asset which you can then leverage. And earned is really when the others and the whole social graph gets active, and the kind of you earn the reputation, you earn communication, you earn conversations out there. And the great media plans and the great, I still say media plans, but I mean communication plans. Great plans have a combination of these assets, sharing, and something paid to support it. I show you one example, which cost $800, 800 euros, which changed the country, which is amazing. So this is what I mean, which helps here with this model. If you don't have much money, that's okay. Move to what can you own, and where do you get earnings in that way? Not necessarily with money. If you have big money, fine, spend it. But then you are lazy on the other side. Okay. Social by design. This was very interesting. I had a discussion with a regional president here in London, a regional president for this region, Eastern Europe and Western Europe. And he said, you know, Bernhard, I get challenged by one client, had a big pitch coming up, and I didn't get challenged by the media folks, not by the marketing folks. He got challenged by the CEO of that company. And the CEO wanted to know, what do I need to do different in the next 3 years? Simple, but what do I need to do different in the next 3 years? And he came back to me and said, you know, what I will present in this pitch, I turn around how we do media planning, communication planning, marketing planning. He started with social. He started with social. And I got some tips while I was listening to him, and then obviously kept my ear open as I went more into my consultancy and I talked to clients. Some of the tips, be first. Think of a campaign first. What is the social component here? Before you start anything else. Once you do this, you need to be incredibly authentic. You need to be prepared to interact. Again, when I say prepared to interact, think organizationally, what you need to set up to interact. Be ready for the word of mouth, an interesting concept within this external relation, public relation domain. Trust, it's enormously important. Usually I show a chart which is now known, so I don't show it anymore, where trust in advertising is about 1 percentage point above trust in car salesmen. 9% was a review we did with the WFA. And nurses, teachers, doctors are in the 70-80% range. Gives you where we are in the industry, gives you an hint here. And be very inclusive in your brief. So don't start a brief with 70% TV, 30% radio, but include insights, include ideas, include perspectives, so people get together as a collaborative team and can manage and handle a campaign. Interesting data I just got last year when I had a conference, no, earlier this year conference with TNS. The blue ones are the total number of brand friends. The red lines are those who do not want to be bothered by companies or organizations in social networks. That's the hurdle we have to overcome. Okay, so Poland is not different. 52, 51% do not want companies, social networks. Okay, so don't be there if you don't have a reason for being there and you have something to say and have an intention. Otherwise, you fall immediately into this 50% bucket. So, which means when you take that the new communication we're talking, what we need to craft is something much more connecting, inspiring, engaging, with advocacy and an experience. Many people don't talk about media planning anymore, they talk about experience planning, engagement planning, different words. We had different words from you guys today. Whatever it is, it needs to be step changing to what many of us have been doing in the last years. The last point, and then you go to real cases. Listen, measure. I added listen. Usually I talk about measurement and KPIs. I added listening. And it is from moving from quantity to quality. You can get any measures you want, definitely in the digital space. But qualitatively assessing whether something is good or bad, okay? Something positive or negative, or what does it mean in a communication, that is a trick we need to find out. I also encourage you to set benchmarks. Just recently, again, I still have an ear for Procter & Gamble when they say something. I heard that Mark Pritchett was saying, I want brand plans to include 25% of their spending in the digital space, 25%, which is enormous for Procter & Gamble. Okay? I've always resisted to do that because I couldn't imagine, I was a global manager. If I say 25%, I knew somewhere in Kazakhstan they would work on 25%, but that's what the global headquarters says. So there's a danger in setting benchmarks. But I would encourage you to look through what you want to change and explicitly go out to your organizations and set very clear numbers, benchmarks, criteria. Otherwise, you don't get the change you want. And this is where I basically added the listening aspect into how I think and how I consult. I read Coca-Cola, they have good agencies, opened a review for listening only. Now we can talk about agency fragmentation, how many agencies you can keep on a roster and still manage them effectively. But they wanted specifically just a listening agency in the social space to learn much more about their consumers and then create such great campaigns as we have seen just now. By the way, Coca-Cola became Advertiser of the Year last night in Geneva, in Montreux, in the celebration. They won most awards and points. They have a point system during the festival, which is fantastic. But you see how they did it. They listened. All right. Plus, what I noted, many cases have a social component, charity-like, do something good. More and more, I see companies doing that one, building this into campaigns. One marketing director of a big company even told me, Bernhard, you know, I cannot do any more without anything. I have to do a charity first and then plug the brand in, otherwise I don't get these ratings and the business results as I'm used to. So don't forget that one as well. In fact, it is even in the marketing constitution from the American National Association of Advertisers.